Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I step off the train and deliver an episode to you while I stroll home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good afternoon, listeners. It is a balmy September 3rd. The weather is on the warmer side after several days of cooler weather. Of course, the day I have to walk home from the train is the day it's hot and sticky. But I'm happy to be talking to you. It's September 3rd, so we're past the beginning of the month. I was traveling the last couple days, so I did not have a chance to do an immediate top of the stack update. But now that I'm heading home, I get to do so. I did not get a chance to print out my top of the stack update though, so it'll be a little less reading and a little more talking. I thought I would start this time to change things around with the results of my top of the stack. As you recall, I had 3 games on the top of the stack last month. I had the Bloody Inn, Hyperborea, and the Siblings Trouble. I also had as my alternate/repeat Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But once again, Buffy has failed to slay anything because I have failed to play Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I also was unable to get to the table the Siblings Trouble. This is a game from 2015 with a storytelling component that I thought would be fun and I had all ready to play, but I did not manage to get it played in the month of August. On the other hand, I was able to play and thoroughly enjoy the 2 other games on my list. I believe that I talked about the Bloody Inn a little bit, but I'm going to talk about it again. Apologies if this is a duplicate. I honestly can't remember if I talked about it. So the Bloody Inn is a card game where you play one of a number of sort of ravenous, villainous people working in an inn and making money by murdering the travelers. It's a really tight game with a vicious economy cycle. So the way the game works is you have these assistants. You start with a couple peasants who assist you, and you can recruit other people staying at the inn to help you with your work. And the different people are good at different things. There are people who are good at bribing. There are people who are good at building. There are people who are good at murdering, and people who are good at burying. If, whenever you want to bribe, meaning recruit to your service one of the guests, murder one of the guests, bury a corpse, or turn one of the guests that you've recruited into a permanent bonus by making an annex, you have to discard a number of cards equal to the level of that guest. So, for example, there is a guest that is really good, let's say, at recruiting other guests. And that guest maybe is level 3 and has the bribe icon on his card. So for you to get him, you would need to discard 3 other cards. And then you lose those cards. But now you have the guest who's really good at bribing people. In future, if you want to bribe someone, if you can bribe a level 1 guest by just playing your recruit who has the bribe icon, then he will happily recruit and not leave. However, if you want to kill somebody, like say you want to kill a level 1 guest, to kill them you also need to discard a card. And if you use your bribing guy, then he will leave because he doesn't like killing people. The same goes for people who like to kill people, all of whom are law enforcement, which is kind of creepy. There are people who like to bury people and people who like to build. It's constantly a game of balancing how many cards you have, how much money you need, how much money you can get. Because one of the hardest parts of the game is that you're set up to have a sort of system of honor where you only get the money off of a corpse that you've killed after you bury it. So you might find a really strong character and you might murder them to get their money, but until you can bury them, they're a corpse clogging up your house. And if ever there's a cop, you'll get stuck burying the body in the pauper's field with the help of the town gravedigger, who will require 10 gold as payment and keep all the money that was in the coffin. It's a really interesting game, a very tight economic system, and really fun. I'm terrible at it. I've played it a couple times, but really fun. That's the Bloody Inn. I hear there's a circus folk expansion, the Carnies, that looks really fun. I don't know how widely available it is, but if I get a chance to pick that up, I definitely will. I'm not sure I'll pay full retail for it. We'll see. So that's the Bloody Inn. The other game from the top of the stack that I was able to play is Hyperborea. I believe I did talk about Hyperborea a little bit. It is a adventure game. It's a Euro game disguised as an adventure game, by which I mean when you're playing, you appear to be sending adventurers out on the road, but all of the battle and all of the exploration is deterministic, and so you're really doing a bag building engine builder. The game doesn't take very long. It looks like the kind of game that would take hours, but it really takes about an hour. And it's got some interesting choices about which things you choose to do. When you draw cubes out, you can put them on these various action spaces, which allow you to take specific actions, and you can explore and kill things. And it's an interesting game because the art is lovely, the theme is fun, but I think it probably suffered from what I call the Sports Night problem. Sports Night is a TV show written by Aaron Sorkin, made in the mid-2000s or early 2000s. And the problem it suffered from was that it was an erudite, clever comedy about an ESPN-type sports show. And while there are certainly people who enjoy an ESPN show and also enjoy clever, erudite comedies, I would suggest it's not an even overlap. I would also suggest that people who, in the middle of a work week, during the week, want to watch an ESPN-type show called Sports Night are not going to be interested in erudite comedy. Similarly, people looking for an erudite comedy in the middle of the week are probably not going to tune into something called Sports Night. Hence, Sports Night did not get enough interest and was canceled after 2 seasons. I think Hyperborea suffers from the same problem. People who are intrigued by the cool warrior art on the box cover and the big size of the box open it up and discover a bag building Euro and find that is not at all to the taste or excitement of the kind of game they're going for. Similarly, people who would look and find a bag building Euro to be an interesting game to play are probably not going to pick up something as sort of gaudy as Hyperborea. Nonetheless, I enjoyed it, and it'll definitely stay on my shelf for a while yet. Not sure how often I'll get to play it, but my daughter and I had a good time with it. That's Hyperborea. So, top of my stack, I was 2 for 3, with the alternate also not getting played. In the coming month, I've decided on 4 games. The middleweight game that I'm going to play is Res Arcana. The game to play with one of my kids is Loveless and Babbage. The game I haven't played for my collection that's going to take some work and effort to play is Argent the Consortium. I'm really keen to try that out. And finally, the repeat game that I'd like to try is The Siblings Trouble. Now, I know that was just on my list, and historically I have a pretty bad record regarding putting a game on my list 2 months in a row. Almost guarantees that I won't play it, but I did figure out all the rules, and I think I'm going to have time. So The Siblings Trouble is my alternate/repeat this month. So as of the end of last month, I had played 78 new games, I think. Maybe 84, something like that. And so I continued to play new games. I believe I had played 78 at the end of July. And as of the end of August, I'm up to 91. significant number of those new games came out of my trip to Gen Con and the subsequent gameplays at Toggle. I've talked about quite a few of those already, but there were 3 I wanted to give a little bit more attention to. Trekking the National Parks is an interesting Ticket to Ride style game. It feels very much like Ticket to Ride in that you're collecting cards and building routes in the same way that you do in Ticket to Ride. However, it does have a couple twists in terms of the way that the cards play out, and that gives it enough flavor to make it worth playing, even if you already have Ticket to Ride or kind of have got that game firmly in your sights. Trekking the National Parks gives you a nice alternate approach to the same kind of game. The other 2 games I wanted to talk about that were on my new, like I said, I had 13 new games this month, but there's only 2 more I wanted to talk about. One of them is The Grim Masquerade. Again, I apologize, I can't remember if I talked about this one or not, but The Grim Masquerade is a deduction game. I wouldn't call it a social deduction game necessarily, because all of the clues come from what you do rather than what you say. There is no point in the game where something a person says should influence what you're doing. I mean, it could, in the same way that any game that involves competition could be influenced by what a person says. But in the context of this particular game, nothing is to be gained through that kind of interplay. So in The Grim Masquerade, you play one of the fairy tale creatures or fairy tale figures from the Grimm fairy tales. This is in the same universe as Grimm Forest, so it's got that sort of cutesy art by Mr. Cuddington, and solid gameplay from Druid City Games. Like I said, it's a deduction game, so you are secretly one of 8 or 9 characters, and your goal is to get 3 of your treasures, or be the last one alive because other people have been picking up 2 of their curses. So each character has a curse and a treasure. If you manage to get 3 of your own treasure, you win. If you end up with 2 of your curse, you lose. So there's an interesting part where each round you're going to draw 2 cards. You draw 1 card. It's got one of the treasures. Well, I want to be clear. Every treasure is also a boon. So like the wolf might want the rose, and Rumpelstiltskin hates the rose, for example. I don't think that's the right combination, but so you draw a rose and you can decide, do you want to give it to someone? Do you want to keep it yourself? If you give it to someone who already has a rose, you give them the second one and they're Rumpelstiltskin, they would lose. If they're not Rumpelstiltskin, then they say, oh, I'm not Rumpelstiltskin, and they put a token on the Rumpelstiltskin card. They also have the option of spending those 2 roses to get a bonus on their next turn. It's a fine game. You play 3 rounds, and each round there's slightly more points for winning. So the game ratchets up in a nice way, meaning that even on the 3rd game, if you haven't won, you still have a chance of winning. It's fine. I didn't find it particularly compelling. I didn't find it particularly off-putting. It was just kind of there. I liked the actions that it took in terms of developing the deduction part of the game. There's a nice little element of bluffing, and the possibility of using the 2 cards to get a special bonus works really well. Seems like it has a lot of variability. We played twice at 4-player count both times, and it was a lovely game both times. The other new game I wanted to mention that I got to play was Yogi. Yogi is a game from Gamewright. It is a dexterity game in which you are manipulating your body to stay in the round. The idea of the game is you're going to draw a card. It's either a red card or a green card. If it's a green card, it gives you an instruction for a way to position your body. For example, in the last game of it I played, it said your left elbow should be above your head. Once you draw that card, then you have to lift your left elbow above your head and keep it there the rest of the game. If you ever drop your left elbow below your head, you lose. There are all sorts of different cards involving ways that you're holding your body. There are also red cards, and the red cards demand that you do something with the card. It'll say balance this card on the back of your hand or on your head, or your elbow needs to be touching this card, or blah, blah, blah. So basically, you just go around drawing a card and doing what it says, and keep going until you're the last one doing things, and then you win. Or if you failed to be the last one to do something, then you lose. It's a cute little kid's game. My son got it as a present, and he enjoys it quite a bit. Not a game I would suggest going out of your way to get, but if you get the opportunity to play it, it's cute. So that's Yogi, I believe from Game Right Games, although I could be wrong about that. Well, the last thing I wanted to share here on my top of my stack is my shelf of opportunity and accompanying list of 10 for 10s. On the shelf of opportunity, I have a total of 53 unplayed games this month. I acquired several, played several, got rid of a couple. So ultimately I'm down one. Last month I had 54. So I've made one game progress, which is not ideal, but I've kind of given up on making too much progress there. But as long as I'm not slipping to worse, I guess that's pretty good. On my 10 for 10s, I am at 82% on my hardcore 10 for 10, and I'm at 92% on my normal 10 for 10. So I'm very close to finishing up that one, at which point I think I will pursue the remaining plays on my outstanding plays from previous years. So how did you do on your top of the stack this month? Pop over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know. I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for joining me on my walk. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.